I'd like to introduce our keynote for today. Lanada Warjack is a member of the Shoshone-Bannock tribes, where she lives on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation in Idaho. She attended the University of California at Berkeley and graduated with honors in the independent major of Native American law and politics. While a student at UC Berkeley, Lanada participated as the Native American component of the first ethnic studies program in the UC statewide effort to establish Native, Black, Chicano, and Asian studies. In 1969, Lanada and other students throughout California took over Alcatraz Island in a peaceful protest of the federal government's ill treatment of Native American people and broken treaties with tribes. This facilitated certain subsequent government-funded policies for Indian tribes nationwide while recovering millions of acres of Indian land back. Pursuing enforcement of treaty obligations and Indian rights, Lanada was on the founding board and executive board of the Native American Rights Fund for nearly a decade and maintains a current relationship where she has been involved in fundraising efforts. Lanada has been an elected councilwoman for her tribes and served on many boards, both locally and nationally. In 1985, she co-wrote organized Tribal Survival Ecosystems and received her certificate in permaculture design from the International Permaculture Institute, Tasmania, Australia. Dr. Warjack completed her graduate work at Idaho State University with a master's in public administration and a doctorate of arts degree in political science, Pocatello, Idaho, in 1999. Dr. Warjack served as the executive board for the Shoshone-Bannock tribes for 3 years and presently the president of Indigenous Visions Network. She has worked as a special tribal judge in the Shoshone-Bannock tribal courts, Fort Hall, Idaho, and taught classes in Native American history at Craigton University in Omaha, Nebraska. Lanada is presently editing her book publications this fall 2015, and we are very excited to read it. Without further ado, this is like my second mother, Lanada Warjack, doctor.
Thank you, Jesse. I guess, did you ever get that sound system set up? Or?
Microphone is set up for the YouTube.
Okay, well. All right. I did want to mention my book is called Colonization Battlefield, and hopefully it'll be out before the end of this year. I'm just really working to get that done. And I believe there's an address, yeah, right there. So if you are interested, I'm in the pre-sale process right now. I want to thank Jesse and everyone here at the language program for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here. And I did want to mention that I am one of the illegitimate tribes of Montana. Have you ever heard of Bannock City? Used to be the capital of Montana. And they took all the gold, and of course the Bannocks got out of there, the ones that were left. And so if you ever go through Dillon, and let's see, do you want to?
Don't have a picture. Oh, okay.
If you ever go through Dillon, you'll see where it says Bannock State Park or something. That was one of our areas in there. My great-grandfather, who was Bannock, he signed the treaty, which was another band of Bannock, and so that's how we got our reservation in Fort Hall. So that's where we're currently located, and I guess I'll go ahead and start the program if you want to go ahead. We're talking about decolonization, but before we can talk about that, we need to know what colonization is. So this is a lot of Western kind of thinking in how they're defining decolonization. So what I would do is just go over here to the end here. What we're talking about is the overturning of the colonial structure and realizing Indian liberation. So that was one of our quests quite some time ago with when I was at the University of California, where we initiated, well, we called it Third World Studies at the time, which is Indigenous Nation Studies today. And that's why we have Native American Studies programs today. It went throughout California immediately because we're at Berkeley, and whatever we do there, it goes statewide. And after that, then we went out to Alcatraz Island and liberated the island in protest of the genocide, broken treaties, and everything else. So if you can go on. I've already talked about that. That's the name of my tribe, the Naquat. They could never pronounce it right. So this is my father, by the way. So it really wasn't that long ago. He did go through the boarding school. And here's that. I took that picture on the way over, and it was really fast. So I had to. And then this is my great-grandfather, the one that signed the treaty. So we're not very far from our indigenous culture and our roots. But unfortunately, I didn't get to learn the language because my parents were out of the boarding school system where they were not allowed to speak the language, although they were trilingual and they did speak the language, but they would not teach it to us because they didn't want us to get punished for speaking the language the way that they were punished. So we were not able to, well, we would listen to the language. They spoke Bannock, and they also spoke Shoshone and English. So whenever we would start listening and trying to catch on to the words, they would just switch languages on us, and we'd be a little confused about that. So we do know some of the language, but the easiest language for me to learn was Shoshone, so I do speak some Shoshone. And Bannock is pretty much a lost language because there's so few left. There was only two men that came out of that last Bannock War out of Idaho with the Sheep Eater campaign. And so they had 2 children. One was lost, one lived, which was my great-grandfather, and so that's why we're alive today. So I don't have very many relatives on my reservation because I am Bannock. Sorry about that. Forgot. So what we're talking about here, where we came from, and I want to go to the tree of life.
I can't skip around right now.
You can go backwards. Do this way.
No, don't. I have to skip through all the slides if I was to do that.
Okay, what this is the tree of life, and the base of our tree would be our matrilineal system, which is the natural laws that we practiced. And we knew it, everything on here, how they all connected and how it encircled. And that's the way that we set up our governing systems as well. And because we were all on the same level, but we were all necessary and needed. You need one clan to support the next clan that supports the next. And it operated in an entire circle so that we were all connected and we were all not above each other in the way that the hierarchy is today. So I have a pheasant in there which is not supposed to be there. I think it's Asian, actually. But when I was putting those in, I couldn't take it out because I'd already done that. So if you can see, within our geographic environments, the plants and animals that were natural to that environment is the way that we pretty well established ourselves, how we lived, and the respect for survival of each group. So love and respect was very integral to our whole system. And then, of course, there's the language. Here we are. The way my mother described the language, because she didn't want us to learn it, but she said it was, it's more of an energy. She said it's like a deep pool of water, and you can understand on whatever level that your thinking is on, but it goes all the way down like a deep pool. And she said it's an energy. If you've, say like for instance, love, if you've ever fallen in love, then you have a different energy, and you can hear songs and they sound different than, ordinarily you're just going along and, oh, that's a nice song, but it sounds different because it's an energy. And that's how the language was, she said. It was the whole world was there, open in front of your eyes, from the mountains to the trees to how everything connected. It was a very beautiful way, but she still wouldn't teach us the language. So this is at the base of our matriarch, is the language and the importance. And when we talk about decolonization, then we go through the whole circle and back to the language again. Language. And then the ancestors are at the roots, and whenever we pray, we always pray and support our ancestors because they're still helping us and they're still there. So next. And then our songs that are very important and tied in with our ceremonies and our dances. And they're all there to support our foundation and our base. Because as you pray, and as we do, your voice comes from your heart and your soul. And in a song, it comes out and it goes through the air. And as you're praying, we're the only ones that can have positive, concentrated thought. So as it comes out, it's like a code that floats through the air on light, and it gets to the plants and the animals, and that's how we maintain the balance of land and life. And it was our responsibility daily to do this, to pray, because the plants and animals and everything depended on it. And also, sunrise was our real important time, because this way it went worldwide as it went, because your sound travels on light and goes to the sun, and as the world turns, all the positive codes come back to the plants and animals and to the people. So sunrise was a very important time for all of this. And then just to what happened, after living in our very beautiful and wonderful life, we had to go through the genocide. And you can really track what happens in the genocide if you've ever studied European history. You can find out who they were and why. Because the same practices that they did to their own people in Europe with all the Christian wars, and there were wars upon wars, they destroyed their own indigenous cultures and societies. So it was pretty intentional what they did and when they came here. So these are just kind of the end of that time as they pushed us onto the reservations. And then, of course, the genocide, Wounded Knee, kind of marked an end time for that. But also they passed the civilization rules and regulations. And it took away all of our ceremonies languages and dances. It was all illegal to practice at that time. So the way that it was expressed, Black Elk, he expressed it as the circle hoop, the hoop of life was broken. And it's been expressed in many different ways of what happened at that time, about 1880s into the 1890s. It just totally devastated us as we were wiped out. And they took a lot of the leaders and put them in prisons or killed them. And what was left was mainly just the women. I mean, they were held incarcerated as well, but then they moved on to passing more legislation to put all the children into Christian and government boarding schools. And then there's just one of the pictures I can. Anyway, the boarding schools and a lot of horrible things happened to our people. Went through all the abuse, the physical, sexual, mental abuses that happened, the deaths that happened to the children. But our children were pretty well held there, so that the older people, the chiefs and everyone would not wage any war. They were kind of like, they were held there like that, and then totally brainwashed. And a lot of people had to get through that situation, but this started the whole colonization process. Can that go up anymore? No, down.
No.
I've already. Go down so you can see this. Can it go down anymore? Yeah. So here's kind of this process that I believe one of our first speakers, Mike, was talking about. He had this line drawn through there, and this is kind of a model of a civilization, which is the colonization process, where we came from the matriarchy here in our circle of life, and you've heard from a lot of good presenters on all of this. And then we're going through this whole process into the patriarchy, which is a hierarchy of oppression. And this is what we're living in today, and it's all made up. It's not anything that is natural necessarily, because this is the natural life. We practice the laws of nature. All indigenous societies worldwide practiced the matriarchy. And what that is the balance of male and female. It's not, all of, like the females rule, although we always work at it. No. And so this process, this model goes all the way through into the patriarchy, and then you can also go back. You can also go back to your roots and learn again. So it's not just a one-way street. We can make it go both ways. I'll go down. So this is what we're living in today. This is the other side. This is the hierarchy. And in the hierarchy, this is pretty much how we're set up under the government. Here's where we are. We're under the Secretary of Interior. There's 15 cabinet offices, and that's appointed by the president. Then it goes down all the departments that are under the Department of Interior. And then we get here to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And then the 12 area offices, the 83 agency offices, and the 565 IRA tribal governments. So we're at the very bottom level of this whole hierarchy, and on the federal side. Now the state side right here, I know Montana has made some really good inroads into the state side, but usually, you know, we get left out of this whole process because the funding, you know, goes through this side. And here's their court systems right in the middle. But ours over here, it's all federal, and that's how we get cut out of the whole state funding that's meant for tribes, because they count us. We're part of their population within the state, and we're counted. So that's how we lose money there, because there's no way for us to elect, as you can see on the federal side. We can't elect any of these people. It goes, because these are all appointments, presidential appointments, so we can't, you know, we have no say or any control over our side of it, which is the federal side. And only through the state side can we have any input. And I know that I would say Montana is probably far surpassed in being involved in the state government side to make those differences and those changes, which is totally incredible. And I think that maybe because of the size, the population that you have here in Montana, that you're having such a good input into the system like that. But really proud of all you guys from Montana. I'm just, you know, I think that's absolutely wonderful that you can have the kind of input and in. Do you want to go to the next one? I wanted to talk a little bit about this because, you know, that hierarchy of the government that I showed you, that is only one part. And that part is classified under the welfare system. And that's why there's always so much of a fight between the government, the social institutions, the educational institutions, because there's these three branches, and the corporations are one branch, and the small businesses, which is the middle class, is the other branch, and everybody else is classified as the welfare state. So if you can understand how they have it all divided, you can see why the corporations are pretty well much in control when they can buy off this side, which is the government. So with those different institutions, it's difficult. But go up there to the tribal nations, because there we are on the tree. But it looks very different. And if you go to the next slide. I'll tell you the difference here in a second, but this one here is just to remind us. You know, this symbol here, a lot of the tribes have that symbol within. And what that means, of course, is it represents the four nations of humankind, the black, white, red, and yellow. And we're all encircled within that same spiritual circle. So we still have the opportunity to try to work with everybody within that circle. It's just that so many others have already been, like say in Europe, what happened over there, they've already been colonized, and they work under another system and a different kind of mentality. So we go back to the decolonization. And what I just talked about was the process of colonization, because we have to know what colonization is before you can talk about what decolonization is about. So decolonization is exactly what you're doing. You're working with the languages, and that's absolutely supreme, because that's what is at the base of this whole tree. It's right in our roots, and we just need to make sure that we add, and I've seen it all here, the songs, the prayers, and then we have the dances. So everything is coming back, and that is decolonization in a nutshell. It's indigenizing ourselves and our people and our way of thinking, because Western mainstream thinking is not connected to the earth. They don't do prayers. They do prayers, but it's all about God and Christianity, and that's fine for, people who have been Christianized, but it's the prayers are a little bit different, because in the indigenous way of thinking, it's always, for our ancestors and the plants and animals, and you know how all those prayers go. So that's what we depend on, are those prayers, and that's the main strength and force that we have, that puts us on another level. And as Native people, we have that ability to change all the negative into a positive. And as people and as tribes, we can do it. And you're all involved in that process. And within the educational institution as well. So you're doing exactly what needs to be done. And I think that this workshop and everything today just represents all of that, with all of the voices that have been heard and all of the presentations that have been made is extremely valuable. And it's going to, I understand it's all going to be on a website, so you can always go back and look at it. And this is just a way, you can go up to the next one. This is just a way to look at it, of where we start and how we go through here, through this whole process and where we're at now. But the thing is our tree is very different now. And that happened right here, where it was cut off at the base when the sacred hoop was broken. And we brought that circle back together again. So the sacred hoop is no longer broken. It's back together, and it's just a matter of strengthening the whole process and everything that everybody is doing. So the way that the tree looks, and I couldn't find I'd have to draw one. But if you think about it, if it's cut off right here at the base, you know what that looks like, right? Where we were cut off. And then where it starts growing again from the roots. Have you ever seen a tree that's been cut off at the base and all the roots are growing out, and the stems and the leaves? If you've ever seen that, that's more of what we look like today. And that's why things are so different. We'll never be the way that it was, but we will still be alive, and we will still be growing. And because we don't have all those things that connect us like that, we're pretty well out there like that. And that's why we have to unite and work together. And if you can imagine, say, a circle in the middle, one little circle, representing us as a tribe, as people within a clan, or, and as individuals, we're a part of that. And then you go to the next circle, imagine another circle around that. And then you go to our race of people. As a people, we're a race. and then you go up to the next level, and then you see everybody, all the people. And then you go to the next level, which is the fourth level, and that's our universal selves, where we're just the human race. So it's good, to start as tribes and clans and bands and groups, and then you just start expanding on, and you just keep going until we become that ultimate circle where we're all humankind again, and that's the process as well. So I know that a lot of times we get into tribalism, where we're, my tribe's better than yours and all of that. I've heard a lot of that throughout my travels. But, we just need to start uniting more and working with each other more, which this workshop is absolutely doing, uniting a lot of people and a lot of tribes and a lot of people, which is absolutely wonderful. It has the whole concept of unity, which is the strength. In order to be very strong, we have to unite and we have to work together with each other, because once we can see the problem and the issue, and then we can, be able to not see each other as so much as being different from each other, but we can start working together, uniting our forces and our minds together. So this, I looked for, I tried to find in our computers, which are very colonized, for words, and I couldn't find the word colonized. Remember, we looked that up and we couldn't find a definition for that. So I was wondering if any of you had a real good definition of how you would say we are being colonized, because when we're on our reservations and working with tribal government, and everybody is so much a part of that bureaucracy, and you can't get anything unless you have a notarized statement from this other person who said it's okay that you can pick up this piece of property or whatever it is that you're doing. That's all part of that bureaucratic process. Do you have one?
Yeah, I looked it up on my phone. Colonize, a verb of a country or its citizens send a group of settlers to a place and establish political control over it. The Greeks colonized Sicily and southern Italy, come to settle among and establish political control over the indigenous people of an area. It also says a white family that tries to colonize a Caribbean island. Appropriate, a place or domain for one's own use. Ecology, of a plant or animal establish itself in an area. Mussels can colonize even the most inhospitable rock surfaces. So yeah.
Well, you found right off your phone, and here. What did we look on our phones? We did.
And I pulled up the Webster Dictionary.
Yeah. So we tried to find, what they were saying colonized was, and it wasn't as complete as that one, but that's pretty good. But we know what we're talking about when we're dealing with people who have that mentality, and that's the difference between, say, indigenous way of thinking or an indigenous perspective and ideology, because ours is connected to the earth with all the respect, with all the prayers, with all the love, with all the unity that we all work together. So that's why our way of thinking was very different, because we went from the natural laws. We knew when the leaves on the tree turns red in gold, we know, okay, winter's coming. You know, we didn't say, let's take another month or so and we fall. You can't do that. The natural laws are there and they operate, they're in place. But with Western mentality, it's very different. It's like the time change. You can set your hour back or hour ahead, whatever. But we deal with that every day, and it's a difficult world to live in, because if you have that Western mentality, then that's the driving forces within the educational institutions, and it's very difficult to be both and to maintain that balance of the two. I mean, I go through that all the time, but I think my indigenous ways are stronger than the others, so unfortunately I have this background as well. So I could never, well, I did work in a university for a little while, but they would not hire me. I had to be adjunct, and I wouldn't do it. They had a whole department of Native American Studies and would not hire one full-time Native person. And I argued with them and told them, as long as you have non-Indians teaching Native American Studies, there's always going to be misinformation, stereotypes, and lies that go on. But what they do is they borrow from the other departments, and it's okay for the facts, like say in history, if you're doing historical facts and things like that, but it still doesn't give the perspective of what actually happened. You know, it'll give you dates and the cavalry and what they did, but you still don't get it. And that isn't why we fought for Native American Studies or Indigenous Studies or Third World Studies. That's not the reason why we did that. We fought to get our own people in there and aligned to start teaching the real information, to start teaching the truth. Because if you work within an educational institution of higher education, you want the truth. You don't want all this colonized version and lies of things that have happened, and unfortunately that's the way it's going. The government itself, the U.S. Constitution, you know, yes, we did have our people there to assist with that, with the Iroquois Confederation. And they had the whole system set up, the separation of powers and the different branches, but they had women there also. And of course, the U.S. government did not want women involved at all, and women were taken out. So there was never a balance. And women are fighting to this day to be recognized within the system, to get a balance, but there has never been that balance reached yet. And also, they wanted the ceremonies, the spiritual ways intact, but of course they wouldn't do that, because Christianity is man-made, the same as the patriarchal government is. It's all man-made. It's not a natural way of life. And unfortunately, and it's not anybody's fault of what happened, you know, and becoming colonized, becoming Christianized. We're all working to become ourselves now. We're all working to become more indigenous. And I would say that the basis of it is our prayers. That's our strength. And that's what gives us the ability to transform and change things around. Plus we have all the medicines. You know, you see all these goofy shows on TV and all about, what are they called? They're like where they have spirits come in and their bodies, ghost hunters and all of that. Yeah. I mean, gee, get some sage or do some prayers, you know, cedar that place, you know, do what you need to do. But we have ways of taking care of things, and I know non-Indians don't have access to that. They don't know that, but we do, and that's why we are so blessed, you know, as a people and as groups. And we just need to unite our forces and continue going on. But I am so thankful and happy to be here. And I appreciate the time, although I don't know that much of my language. But I appreciate it, and I'm still learning. You know, as people, we're learning every day. Just keep our minds open. And to all the energies as well that are out there, that are good, all the positive energies, and just maintain our positive will and our positive ways, and we can be strong again. So I want to thank you, and if there's any questions, I'm willing to talk about it if you want to. If you don't have any questions, yes.
You know, on that page where you said genocide, I would change it to ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
Because that's precisely what it was. And when there were problems when Yugoslavia became unglued, the U.S. was always saying ethnic cleansing, as though they had never, that's the first time they ever heard about it. But we're products of that.
Yes, that's true.
It's time for them to understand that word. Without it, I don't think they will change their attitudes towards us or their policies.
I know. It's very difficult. I went to the historic trauma workshops, which was good. But it was, you know, from the Jewish commissions that were held, and they've come up with some really good ideas that, you know, we could incorporate ourselves, you know, for our own, in terms of the kinds of damage that was done. Let's see, what did I tell you it was? It was moral, material, and there had one other one. That was the one I had to look up, and I didn't remember.
But he actually did the actual killing them off.
Physical. Yeah, okay, the actual physical cleansing, but they have some concepts that we can study and learn as well and develop for our own people. And I understand right now that they are trying to pursue that whole era, that whole issue of boarding schools and what happened in those boarding schools. And I believe Native American Rights Fund is initiating that one as well. So I didn't go to their 45th anniversary of Native American Rights Fund. They had their anniversary, and that was one of the topics, was the boarding school damages that they're looking at. So we've made a lot of progress, and at the same time, when I look at it, I can see that we've come back a few steps, and then we surge on ahead. It's like, it's very difficult because of the politics and the control that still exists, but you guys are doing a good job. Thank you very much.